Hello and welcome to a More Perfect podcast. Today, we're going to be continuing my interview with T Clem, a retired Border Patrol chief with over 27 and a half years of experience. Chris is here to discuss the crisis at our southern border. And in the first part of this interview, we discussed some crazy things, such as the overwhelming amount of people that are streaming over the southern border, hundreds of thousands of them unaccounted for. We also discussed the cartel using drones to smuggle drugs over our southern border and the horrific realities of human trafficking. If you haven't seen the first part of the interview, it goes without saying that you should definitely check it out because it is highly illustrative of the truly horrific situation on the border with Mexico. Chris had a lot more to say about the crisis, though, so let's get right back into it, shall we? I think this is a great segue into the policy area. So my first question is, as far as policy, did anything really change on the ground between the Obama, Trump, and Biden administrations? You talked about the numbers of people, but what were some other on-the-ground consequences of change in administrations?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Obama because it's an important piece of the puzzle. And I'll take it back. I'm just going to walk you through how policy changed over time, right? So in 1994, State of the Union address, President Clinton talked about illegal immigration. He had commissioned former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan to do the impacts of illegal immigration on the workforce and at our border. And the 94 crime bill, which has made a lot of controversy over its existence, but in that bill, it talked about 100,000 more police officers. And he said to include border guards. That was a quote by President Clinton, to include border guards. I was hired under that and entered on duty in 1995. So then Democratic President Bill Clinton talked about we need more border security, more border guards. We need to clamp down on illegal immigration because it's hurting the American economy and it's costing American taxpayers. All right. So there was the first step. All right. He hired more people. We had a first hiring initiative from the Border Patrol in a long time in 1995 when I got hired. Obviously, we had the tragedy of 9/11, which drew immigration and national security together. And we, under President Bush, we implemented a national border security plan. We started building fence and infrastructure. It was basically we called it the three-legged stool: personnel, technology, and infrastructure, where it made sense. We added policies. Obama came in. Okay, Obama came in, and he really wanted to push comprehensive immigration reform. The three words that you hate to hear because that means a bunch of fluff and a lot of trade-offs. That was the deal. And Republicans said, we'll give you your immigration reform if you secure our border. So during the second part of his first term and into the first half of his second term, President Obama directed at the requirements of Border Patrol, finishing up a lot of the Bush era stuff, built hundreds of miles of wall. He was labeled the deporter in chief, okay? Because Obama he was removing because he was removing so many people because he was wanting to do his immigration reform. Well, then it became an argument on the definitions of reform, of operational control of the border, and it was actually the late Senator John McCain from Arizona that kind of ended this push that Obama was doing because he didn't like the way the Obama administration was capturing the data of the border. And so that's one of the famous cell phone and pen executive fiats that President Obama did. So he said, fine, if you're not going to, support my immigration reform, I'm going to do what I can during executive action. So Obama started issuing executive actions that were creating classifications of people that were already here, like the DACA and the Dreamers, which most people don't, honestly, a 2-year-old had no control of what mom and dad did. And if a 2-year-old lived its life, dreamers are not a big concern to us Border Patrol agents, as long as they're not committing crimes or whatever. But the point I'm getting at is at that point is when Obama, when he started saying, if you've been in this country at this date, you're always going to be allowed to stay. Prosecutor discretion, that became a huge pull factor, and that's when the shift changed. We used to have nothing but single adults, mainly men, mainly Mexico and Central America. Then all of a sudden, we started seeing this big push of families and unaccompanied children. That started happening in like 2013, 2014. So you would see these literally hundreds of thousands of family units showing up over the course of a year, and our Border Patrol facilities were not designed for families and kids. The holding cells for short term. Well, in comes President Trump, right? Candidate Trump, we're going to build a wall, we're going to shut this down, right? So there was a whole new push of, wow, we've got a border security problem. So Trump ran on building the wall, which was a great sounding board. You could
I'm
chant
a big fan of that.
Yeah. Well, what for us, border patrol was like, hey, somebody getting back.
Was that wall? Excuse me. Was that wall actually effective? Did it actually help the situation on the ground?
Absolutely, because here's the thing: "Build the wall" was a campaign slogan and a T-shirt and a bumper sticker. For us, it was an entire system and package of border patrol requirements. It was more than just the wall. It was again, wall was a campaign slogan. The wall, the actual package and contracts was wall, cameras, lights, sensors, access roads. It was an entire system of systems that was all built up that based on Border Patrol requirements. That was the key. It was years of Border Patrol trial and error, 10-foot wall, 15-foot wall. No, we need a 30-foot wall with anti-climb. We need bollards, not flat steel. We need technology, autonomous cameras. We need sensors. We built this whole requirement system that Trump implemented, okay? And it was working. And he was tearing down old wall and building new wall. He was replacing fence and wire mesh fence with wall, which was bollard steel. Because Trump wanted a wall, and we said we can't have a wall. We have to be able to see through it to see where the threat is. And he got it. So we built 30-foot bollards with anti-climb, and all the stuff was being implemented and executing. And the numbers, when those things started going in place, like Yuma, before they had most of their wall, we had 64,000 arrests in 2019. As I told you, when we were almost fully implemented in Yuma, it dropped down to 8,800 because people knew you couldn't come in the traditional ways. And we went in 2019 nationally. It was just over 900,000 arrests. In 2020, it was just over 400,000 arrests because all of the things started playing out, right? It was day one under the Biden administration, stop the wall executive order. Now, reason why I told you all the background is because every administration that I started under Clinton was making progress towards border security, whether it was people, technology, infrastructure, or policies. Because even Trump, we put policies and consequences in place. Biden stopped all that through executive order. I think there was 94 executive orders in the first 100 days that were directly or indirectly impacted the border. And you wonder why we went in Yuma from 8,800 to 114,000? Because there was no consequences. Because construction halted on day one of the Biden administration. I have places where you'll go 5 miles with nothing but 30-foot wall, and then there'd be a 400-foot gap. Well, where do you think people would come through? The gap. And next to the gap, there is stacks and stacks of prefab steel that we could put up there. There were spools and spools of fiber optic cable for our sensor system. We had camera towers that all they needed to do would be plugged in and energized. All that was turned off. They actually started tearing down the camera towers because the contracts were ended. All that was done by executive action. By the way, bought and paid for by all of us U.S. taxpayers. And there was only limited areas along our southwest border where did they fill any of those gaps. And it was because of environmental impacts or immediate life and safety issues. Like, in other words, this was a threat area where people could drown if we didn't close this off, or they could get hit by going across the interstate and could get run over, or it was impacting the environment. So again, sorry to cut you off, but it was important to let everybody know that our agents had to drive by all the material that could be used to help them with their job to go pick up a group of 400 because the gap was wide open.
Wow, that's Biden's an asshole for that. Sorry, excuse my language. Yeah. But he's a son of a bitch.
We thought it was spite. We thought it was spite. We thought it was really like, okay, he's doing this and he's just going to rebrand it, right? No president would put its country in harm's way or betray the people. This is just a political game. In a few months, they'll get it all together and they'll repackage everything, and we'll be back under our way. And we could take his administration could take credit for it. I didn't care. I needed to secure the border for the American people. Well, it went from spite to ineptitude to all purposeful is what it did, because it was all by design.
Almighty.
Yep.
Christ almighty. Wow. At least it felt that way. I'm sorry. It was that way until the last few months of the election. They seemed to change the policy a little bit to try and secure the border. I'm assuming that was just a last ditch effort. Just yes or no, like really briefly.
Yeah. Fourth quarter Hail Mary is what that was. Let's be honest. Okay, in December of last year, we were averaging 12,000 arrests a day along the southwest border. The first polling numbers came out on Biden versus Trump and all this stuff actually, I don't think it had been Trump yet, but Biden's poll numbers on border security were the lowest it had ever been in his existence. I believe was in December, because I was actually on an interview on a major network and told them, watch, this will change things because he's looking really bad. And all of a sudden, they pushed the bipartisan Senate bill, and I do want to talk about that because that's been misrepresented. And they started pushing executive actions that for 3.5 years he said he didn't have the authority to do. So again, be that as that may, we can talk about that, but I know we got about 15, 16 more minutes, so I want to make sure I get to your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Let
me take this one step further. I think that will help spur another question, maybe. So
absolutely, sir.
So the House, for over 565 days, sent House Bill H.R. 2, which was a border security bill that Senate Majority Leader Schumer never took up into the Senate. They created their bipartisan Senate bill, and bipartisan, there was one, Senator Langford from Oklahoma was on the initial bill. That bill didn't do anything to secure the border. It actually was more about migrant facilitation, put $1.4 billion to non-government organizations, required that no less than 1,400 people a day be processed and released into the United States through the ports of entry who would otherwise be inadmissible. There was limited. It specifically stated on page 77, I think lines 9 through 12, that no funding appropriations with this bill would be used to fund the 2020 border security plan. In other words, the Trump plan, we couldn't fund any of those initiatives. There was zero mentions of human trafficking or combating child or human trafficking in the bill, but it did require that, again, people would be let loose or caught and released into the United States.
That's intentional.
There was only a hire of 1,500 Border Patrol agents. In 2020, we asked for 3,000 or 500 more. It did require more border or administrative judges, again, to facilitate the processing and the casework of people coming in. So it was not a border security bill. And when the text of that bill, by the way, when the text went public, it lost Democratic support. So you hear a lot of people saying, Trump called his friends and said, don't pass this bill. He wants to run on it. No, the bill never cleared the Senate. So therefore, it was dead on arrival with the House. And the House passed. The House passed H.R. 2. The Senate refused to take it up. So when everybody's saying, oh, yeah, but Trump, no, it never even passed the Senate. The Democrats, 6 Democrats refused to pass the bill because they realized it was not a border security bill. And so what did they do? They did executive actions, which they claimed for 3.5 years they couldn't do executive actions. And by the way, the executive actions didn't stop people from coming in. It just made them come in a different way, and they're still being caught and released and entering the country illegally. They're otherwise inadmissible, but because the administration wants people in, they're letting them in. So again, I went off a little bit on a rabbit hole there, but it needed to be said.
Well, that's certainly stuff that I didn't know, and certainly stuff that my viewers will find interesting. It really illustrates the timeless problem of the out of touch higher ups and the hypocrisy being a serious issue. And then on top of all of that, they have the audacity to slam Border Patrol agents, their own men, in the media. For example, there was that story about the migrant being whipped by Border Patrol on horseback. It turned out to be misleading. Really quickly, two questions, and then I think we can get out of here. Can you tell me any specific stories about agents dealing with the barrage of political criticism and how that affected the morale of the border force? And then going off of that question, how can we help? How can we help and support Border Patrol agents and their welfare?
Yeah, no, great questions and really near and dear to my heart, right? So when I realized into the first few months of this administration that, we weren't going to be able to, this was not just a political spite, this was deliberate and purposeful. And then the crescendo was the Del Rio Horse Patrol incident that happened in September of 2021, where, you mentioned the Horse Patrol and the alleged whipping. And, never before in my life had I seen a president of the United States backed by the vice president and the Secretary of Homeland Security all echoing a false, basically a lie. I'm going to say the president was a liar, saying that and he made the motion, strapping those people, they will pay. He got his angry voice and shook his finger. It was a lie. The guy that took the picture said there was no whips. And anybody that's ever worked with horses or working horses, and I was on the Horse Patrol, we use split reins to control the horse. And the even better horsemen know how to use those reins superbly. I was not that expert. And what it was an opportunity to deflect from the failures of this administration, because what they stopped talking about was the 16,000 people that crossed in 3 days, 3 to 5 days in that same location because of this failed policy. Now, I was 1,000 miles away in Yuma, and when I saw that report, my stomach turned. I wanted to throw up. I said, I can't believe that this president just said that. Like, it's a lie. Like, we know that this didn't happen. Our internal channels already told us, hey, this was not the case. And we knew better. So I felt so sorry for those agents' parents, his wives, their kids, being blasted. So that was, to me, was that proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, that put our morale. Like, we went from being championed under President Trump to victimized under President Biden, and then having, kicked in the gut with that statement. So we started seeing this major decline in morale. And in fact, in 2022, I think there was a total of 22 suicides by Customs and Border Protection. 14 of them were Border Patrol agents. And I had two. One was a detailed agent, and one was one of my staffers that was an agent that was working in my headquarters commit suicide. And I will not say that the Biden border crisis caused it, but I will say this, that if you are in law enforcement or military or any industry where it is mission driven and you have value and you have purpose, and all of a sudden that's taken away from you, that's like your one safe place, and maybe you're dealing with addiction or a family member issue, emotional issue, a financial issue, you get a kid that's having trouble in school or whatever, and you come to work for that one piece of the day where you feel like you've got a purpose and mission, and then that's taken away from you, I will say that could be a contributing factor if you feel like there's no hope. And I think that's what kind of caused, a lot of this happening is like, hey, everything I've lived for was just taken away from us. And so when I do think it's a contributing factor, it shouldn't be the single factor. But yeah, the morale is, I can tell you this, and to the second part of your question, how can you help? I can tell you that under the Trump administration, once he was declared the winner, I got multiple phone calls and text about what a good day it is to be a Border Patrol agent again, because the president will champion not only Border Patrol, but our military and all our law enforcement. And so how do you help? What I would tell your audience and tell anybody is, remember, you want your first responders, whether it's fire, medical, or police, border security, military, you want them to have their head on straight. You want their focus to be the mission and purpose, because in our time of need, whether it's an assault in progress or a chest pain or a threat from a national security threat, you want our agents knowing that we've got their back, because you don't want them thinking about anything other than the mission and taking out that threat or saving that life or making that arrest and saving that domestic violent victim. You don't want them worried about, oh, is this going to look bad? I'm going to get caught on TV and be blasted for political purpose. So you have to back your men and women in blue or in Border Patrol green or military camo. We have got to do that, because in order for us as a country to maintain that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, we have to have the checks and balances in the form of making sure that our domestic policing and our border security is done at 100% and backed by policy and people, and that are the men and women doing the job have our support. And our military, who are going to fight wars abroad to keep us safe at home, that they know that they can come home and be welcomed and encouraged, and their support networks are encouraged. So it sounds crazy. Thank a cop, thank a Border Patrol agent, donate to the local morale, welfare, and recreation groups, because this all means something when they know. Write a letter. Let me tell you, as chief, I would get letters that would, and I got hate mail too, but I would get letters thanking the Border Patrol for what they're doing. And I would make sure I would Xerox that, scan it, and send it out to the entire stations and to all the leadership, and demand that the station commanders go out there and read that letter at their next muster, so people knew that people love them and care for them and support them. And they don't always have the way to say it, but you know what? A letter was nice, and it meant a lot to our agents. I literally see a smile on their face, and little things like that go a long way. We're not going to eat the brownies that you send, because we don't trust that somebody may not poison them, but we do read the letters.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. That's
lastly on that too, to where it can really make a difference is, now we just finished an election cycle, but that's what I would encourage your audience to, is if you support your military, you support your law enforcement, make sure that you're voting and encouraging people to run that have that same mindset, because we need policies and laws enacted that, and an appropriations budget. We need that to back our, I talked about that fundamental need of security. Make sure that your candidates are, their morals and values towards law enforcement are aligned, because that goes a long way when you have a majority, whether it's your town council, county commissioner, your city mayor, your governor, or your elected representatives say, no, we're backing the men and women in blue. We're backing our military. We're backing our border security people, our ICE agents. We want them to rule the law so we can live safely. Just make sure you choose your candidates wisely that have that same feeling, because that's where you get that critical mass and that momentum to where we get our country back and make sure that we can again pursue that life, liberty, and happiness, because we know we're being protected.
Mm-hmm. Goes back to the old adage that will remain true. Freedom isn't free.
That's right.
Freedom is not free. Right. Wow. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you having you on the show. It was quite the honor to have you, and thank you for for everything that you did on the border. You served our country for 27 and a half years through hell. I really thank you for that, sir.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. And thank you for, again, giving me this platform to speak. Great questions and taking on a not so easy topic, especially in some of the environments that your audience is in. It's difficult. So you are fighting the good fight alongside us. And so I appreciate the opportunity. And if you need to have me back on, or we want to follow up, or something changes after the new administration gets started and we want clarification and understanding, you know how to get a hold. I'd be happy to get back on the show.
Well, I will definitely be taking you up on that, because I have a lot more questions. Thank you so much. And I think I'll let you go now. But
that's
again,
perfect.
It's been a pleasure.
You got it. And again, this is not something that you can probably cover in 1 hour or 2 hours, right? It would be multi-segment. So as you reflect back on this show, or when you get more information under a new administration, well, let's segment out. We'll cut out another hour, whatever it takes. We'll make it happen.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
All right. Well,
all right.
Do me a favor and send us the link when you get it all up and ready to go, and we'll echo it on our platforms as well to make sure people can continue to follow. And again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. It was an honor. You got it. Okay, we'll talk soon, okay?
Okay. All right. You have a good day now.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Under the destructive leadership of this outgoing administration, America's seen some of the worst conditions on record at the southern border. The intentional mismanagement of the border is the stuff of nightmares, as this interview hopefully demonstrates. The U.S.-Mexico border remains an eternal political football in American politics, and every large media outlet has their own agenda when it comes to illegal immigration, migrant caravans, drug smuggling, Mexican cartels, border security, and every other issue concerning the southern border. It truly encompasses a gigantic range of topics for debate in our country. However, to get down to business, to really get to the truth about what's happening, you gotta talk to somebody who really knows what they're talking about and has seen things firsthand. And you've got to watch it, or in this case, listen to it, from a source which isn't governed by corporate interests like the mainstream media. Because that's what I really hoped to accomplish with this interview. The border is in a state of pandemonium, and it deserves the most scrutinous documentation and purposeful action possible, because our country is quite literally on the line. Thank you for listening to A More Perfect Podcast. Please spread this podcast with your family and your friends. It really helps. And also rate this podcast 5 stars on Spotify, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts as well. It really helps out with the growth of this podcast. Again, thank you for listening, and as always, have a more perfect day.